Noah Bennett was always punctual. Whether it was picking up his kids, finishing a work project, or simply arriving home for dinner, his life revolved around routine and structure. That evening, he left his office 15 minutes early, hoping to avoid the rush hour gridlock and surprise his wife, Camille, by grabbing dinner from her favorite Thai place. As he navigated through downtown traffic, the glare of the setting sun made it difficult to see clearly. Noah squinted, pulling up to a red light, when something odd caught his eye, a familiar figure stepping into a car just across the intersection. At first, he thought he was mistaken. But as the figure bent to slide into the passenger seat, her distinctive auburn hair and yoga bag left no doubt. It was Camille. Noah's chest tightened. Camille had told him she had a yoga class that evening. Yet, here she was, getting into a car that wasn't hers. He watched as the driver, a man he didn't recognize, leaned over and smiled at her. The light turned green, and the car pulled away before Noah could react. 1,000 questions swirled in his mind as he drove home, his appetite gone. He replayed the moment over and over, convincing himself there must be an innocent explanation. Maybe a friend had given her a ride. Maybe her car had broken down. But deep down, something didn't sit right. When Camille arrived home later that evening, she seemed calm, even cheerful. "Hey, love," she greeted him, setting her yoga mat by the door. "Smells amazing in here. Did you pick up dinner?" Noah forced a smile, watching her closely. "Yeah. Thought I'd surprise you." Camille grinned, kissing him on the cheek. "You're the best." As they ate, Noah studied her demeanor. She was relaxed, chatting about mundane things like her yoga class and the new instructor. But Noah's mind kept drifting to what he'd seen. "Anything exciting happen today?" he asked casually, spearing a piece of broccoli with his fork. "Not really," Camille replied without hesitation. "Just work, yoga, and now this delicious dinner." Her response only deepened Noah's suspicion. If there was nothing to hide, why hadn't she mentioned catching a ride? That night, as Camille slept soundly beside him, Noah stared at the ceiling, his thoughts racing. He wanted to believe her, to dismiss the unease gnawing at him. But the image of her in that car wouldn't leave his mind. The next day, he decided to investigate. Noah spent most of the following day in a fog, his mind constantly replaying the image of Camille getting into that car. By mid-morning, he knew he couldn't focus on work until he had answers. He decided to take his lunch break to dig deeper. Camille had always been open about her schedule, often sharing her weekly yoga class times and locations. He pulled up her favorite studio's website and scanned the schedule. There was indeed a class listed during the time she had claimed to be there. But something still didn't feel right. Later that afternoon, Noah checked their shared calendar. Camille had recently started adding more detail to her entries, a habit she had picked up after a few scheduling conflicts. Sure enough, there was an entry for yoga class on her calendar for the previous evening, complete with the studio's address. The precision only fueled his doubts. If Camille had nothing to hide, why hadn't she mentioned needing a ride or running into a friend? That evening, Noah decided to casually bring up the car he'd seen. As they prepared dinner together, he leaned against the counter, chopping vegetables. "Did something happen to your car yesterday?" he asked casually. Camille glanced at him, momentarily startled. "What?" "No, why?" Noah kept his tone light. "I thought I saw you downtown getting into someone's car. Figured maybe your car was in the shop or something." Her reaction was almost imperceptible, a brief flicker of unease before she forced a smile. "Oh no. That must have been someone else. I drove straight to yoga and back." The lie was so blatant it left Noah momentarily speechless. He studied her, his heart pounding, but he forced himself to play along. Must have been my mistake, he said, turning back to the cutting board. Camille laughed nervously, brushing it off. Guess all yoga mats look the same, huh? But Noah wasn't convinced. That night, as Camille showered, Noah opened her laptop. She often left it unlocked, trusting him implicitly. His hands trembled as he navigated to her emails, searching for anything unusual. It didn't take long to find a thread that made his stomach churn. The sender's name was Brandon M. The subject line was innocuous enough. Looking forward to tomorrow. But the content was anything but. Brandon, can't wait to see you again. Yesterday was perfect. You're amazing. Camille, looking forward to it too. Thanks for making it easy to sneak away. Noah stared at the screen, his chest tightening. He scrolled through the rest of the thread, finding more messages that left no room for doubt. Brandon, you're glowing after yoga. Must be the company. Camille, or maybe it's because you're so good at picking me up. His hand shook as he closed the laptop. He had his answer, but it wasn't the one he had hoped for. The next day, Noah left work early, his mind racing with plans. He parked near Camille's yoga studio just as her usual class ended. When he spotted her exiting the building, his breath caught. She wasn't heading to her car. Instead, she walked briskly to the corner, where a dark sedan was waiting. The driver rolled down the window, and Noah saw him clearly for the first time, a man in his mid-30s with a confident smile. Camille slid into the passenger seat, leaning toward him as if sharing a private joke. Noah's chest tightened as he watched them pull away. There was no denying it now. The betrayal was real, and it was happening right in front of him. He followed the car at a safe distance, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. They drove across town to a small bistro tucked into a quiet neighborhood. Camille and the man, Brandon, Noah assumed, entered the restaurant together, laughing as though they didn't have a care in the world. Noah stayed in his car, his stomach churning. He didn't know whether to storm inside and confront her or wait for her to come home and force her to explain herself. When Camille returned home later that evening, she greeted him with the same easy smile she always wore, as though nothing had changed. But for Noah, everything was different. "You're late," he said, keeping his tone even. "Yeah, yoga ran over," Camille replied, setting her bag down by the door. Noah clenched his jaw, the light burning in his ears. "Really? Because I drove by the studio earlier, and it looked pretty empty." Camille froze, her smile faltering. "You what?" Camille's face went pale, her hand still resting on the strap of her yoga bag. "What do you mean you drove by the studio?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Noah folded his arms, leaning against the counter. "I mean, I went by your yoga studio yesterday," he said evenly. "Funny thing, it was empty, lights off. And yet, you told me that's where you were." Camille opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her eyes darted to the door, as if calculating an escape route. "Don't bother lying, Camille," Noah said, his voice hardening. "I know about Brandon. I saw you get into his car." Her shoulders sagged as she sank into a chair at the kitchen table, her face crumpling. "Noah, I don't—" Noah interrupted, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "Just tell me the truth." "How long?" Camille's hands trembled as she clasped them together, her eyes avoiding his. "A few months," she admitted finally. Noah's stomach twisted, the words hitting him like a punch to the gut. "A few months," he repeated bitterly. "And all this time, you've been coming home, smiling like everything's fine, pretending to be the woman I married? I never meant for it to happen," Camille said quickly, tears streaming down her face. "I swear, Noah. It got out of control." Noah let out a bitter laugh, pacing the kitchen. Out of control? That's what you call sneaking around behind my back, lying to me, and meeting another man after your so-called yoga class? I know I've hurt you. Camille sobbed. But it wasn't like I was looking for this, Noah. It just happened. Don't you dare try to minimize this. Noah snapped, his voice rising. Have you ever suspected someone of cheating, but never had proof? Write in the comments. You didn't trip and fall into his car, Camille. You made a choice. A choice to betray me, to betray our family. Camille buried her face in her hands, her sobs muffled. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. Noah slammed his hand on the counter, making her jump. Well, congratulations, he said coldly. You succeeded anyway. For a moment, the only sound in the room was Camille's quiet sobbing. Noah stared at her, his chest heaving with the effort to contain his rage. Who is he? Noah demanded finally. What does he mean to you? Camille hesitated, her breath hitching. He's someone from work, she said quietly. We started talking during lunch breaks, and it went too far. Went too far. Noah echoed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. How far, Camille? Do I even want to know? She hesitated again, her face crumpling. It wasn't serious, she said quickly. It was just emotional at first. But then what? Noah snapped. You decided to take it to the next level? Camille nodded, her tears flowing freely now. I'm so sorry, Noah. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but it's over. I ended it. Noah shook his head, his chest tightening. When? Last week, Camille said. I told him I couldn't do this anymore, that I couldn't keep lying to you. Noah laughed bitterly. And yet, you were in his car yesterday. So forgive me if I have a hard time believing you. Camille's tears came harder, and she reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I swear, Noah, she said desperately. He picked me up to talk. That's all. I told him it was really over, and I haven't spoken to him since. Noah stared at her, his mind racing. He wanted to believe her, to trust that she was finally telling the truth. But the betrayal still burned, fresh and raw. I need space, Noah said abruptly, his voice breaking. I can't even look at you right now. Noah, please, Camille begged, standing as he turned to leave. Don't give up on us. Let me fix this. Let me prove to you that I'm still the woman you fell in love with. Noah paused at the door, his hand on the frame. The woman I fell in love with wouldn't have done this, he said quietly before walking out. That night, Noah drove aimlessly through the city, his thoughts a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and doubt. He didn't know if he could ever forgive Camille, if their marriage could survive what she had done. As he parked by the waterfront and stared at the dark waves lapping at the shore, one question loomed above all others. Was this the end of everything they had built together? Noah didn't come home that night. He parked near the waterfront, reclined his seat, and tried to sleep in the car, but his thoughts were relentless. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Camille stepping into Brandon's car, her easy laugh as they drove away, her face crumpling when he confronted her. When the sun rose, bathing the harbor in gold, Noah's phone buzzed. It was Camille. Noah, please come home. We need to talk. The kids are asking about you. He stared at the message, his chest tightening. The kids. Their innocent faces flashed in his mind, unaware of the storm brewing around them. With a heavy sigh, he started the car and drove home. When he walked through the door, Camille was waiting in the living room. Her eyes were puffy, and she looked like she hadn't slept either. I didn't know if you'd come back, she said softly. I didn't do it for you, Noah replied coldly. The kids don't deserve to suffer because of your choices. Camille flinched but nodded. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice trembling. Noah, I know I've ruined everything, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I'll do anything to make this right. Noah crossed his arms, his gaze piercing. You've said that already, Camille. But words don't mean much after everything you've done. Camille sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I know you don't trust me right now, she said, and I don't blame you. But I ended it, Noah. It's over. I blocked his number, deleted his contact, and I told him we couldn't see each other again. Funny how you only ended it after I found out, Noah said bitterly. Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I just supposed to go on being the idiot husband while you snuck around behind my back? Camille's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't want to hurt you, she sobbed. I was trying to figure out how to stop without destroying our family. Well, congratulations, Noah said, his voice sharp. You destroyed it anyway. The kids ran into the room then, breaking the tension with their cheerful voices. Daddy, you're home, shouted their youngest, Ellie, as she threw her arms around his legs. Noah's heart clenched as he hugged her tightly. Hey, kiddo, he said, forcing a smile. Miss me? Yeah. Mommy said you were working late. Ellie replied, her voice innocent and bright. Noah glanced at Camille, whose face turned crimson. He wanted to call her out for lying again, but not in front of the kids. Why don't you two go play for a bit? Camille said quickly. The children scampered off, leaving an uncomfortable silence in their wake. Noah turned back to Camille, his expression hard. That's exactly why I can't look at you right now, he said, his voice low. You're still lying, even to them. I didn't know what else to say, Camille said, her voice breaking. I didn't want them to know we were fighting. And whose fault is that? Noah shot back. You're the one who brought this into our home. Camille nodded, tears spilling over. You're right, she said. It's my fault. I made the worst mistake of my life, and I'll regret it forever. But I'm begging you, Noah, don't give up on us. Let me prove to you that I can be better. Noah stared at her, his emotions warring inside him. He wanted to believe her, to hope that their marriage could survive. But the betrayal was too fresh, the pain too raw. I don't know if I can, he said finally, his voice trembling. You've broken something in me, Camille. Something I'm not sure can be fixed. Then let me try, Camille pleaded. I'll go to therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I'll do anything, Noah. Just don't leave me. Noah clenched his fists, his chest tight. I need time, he said abruptly. Time to figure out if this is something I can even begin to move past. That night, Noah stayed in the guest room again, his thoughts swirling. Camille had promised to change, to fight for their marriage, but he didn't know if he had the strength to meet her halfway. He thought about the life they had built together, the family, the memories, the love they had shared. Was it enough to outweigh the betrayal? The question kept him awake long into the night. The days following Noah's return home were filled with silence and tension. He stayed in the guest room, keeping interactions with Camille brief and impersonal. The children, sensing the shift in their parents, asked fewer questions, but watched them with curious, worried eyes. Noah couldn't shake the weight of his emotions, anger, betrayal, and heartbreak tangled in a knot that felt impossible to unravel. Camille's promises to change echoed in his mind, but he couldn't decide if he believed her or if he wanted to. A week later, Noah found himself sitting in his car outside a therapist's office. Camille had made good on her word, booking an appointment for couples counseling and insisting that it was the first step toward repairing their marriage. Noah had agreed, though reluctantly. Part of him wanted to try, to see if there was anything left to salvage. Another part felt like he was simply going through the motions. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Camille was already there, sitting in the waiting room with her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked up when he entered, her eyes filled with hope and trepidation. The therapist, Dr. Hall, was a calm and measured woman in her late 40s. She greeted them warmly and invited them to sit across from her in a small, cozy office. "Let's start with why you're here," Dr. Hall said gently. "Noah, would you like to go first?" Noah hesitated before speaking, his voice tight. "I'm here because my wife broke my trust," he said bluntly. "She lied to me, cheated on me, and now she expects me to believe that everything can just go back to the way it was." Camille flinched but didn't interrupt. Dr. Hall nodded. "Thank you for sharing that, Noah. Camille, what about you?" Camille's voice trembled as she spoke. "I'm here because I made the biggest mistake of my life, and I'm trying to fix it. I love Noah, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that to him." Over the course of the session, Dr. Hall guided them through their emotions, asking difficult but necessary questions. "Noah," she said, "what do you feel has been lost in your marriage because of Camille's actions?" "Everything," Noah said without hesitation. "Trust, respect, security. I used to believe in us and what we had. Now I don't even know who she is." Dr. Hall turned to Camille. "And Camille, what do you feel you need to do to begin earning Noah's trust back?" "Be honest," Camille said softly. "Completely honest, even if it's hard. And show him through my actions, not just my words, that I'm committed to making this right." The sessions continued over the following weeks. They were grueling, filled with raw emotions and painful truths. Noah confronted Camille about every lie, every betrayal, forcing her to account for her actions. Camille admitted to feeling unfulfilled and seeking validation from Brandon, but she insisted that it had been a mistake she deeply regretted. Through it all, Dr. Hall helped them uncover the cracks that had formed in their marriage long before the affair. "I felt like I was losing myself," Camille confessed during one session. "Like I was just a wife and a mom, not a person anymore. But that doesn't excuse what I did. I should have come to you, Noah. I see that now." Noah struggled with his feelings, wavering between hope and despair. He wanted to believe Camille, to trust that her regret was genuine. But the pain of her betrayal still loomed large, casting a shadow over every moment they shared. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Noah found Camille sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea. "Can we talk?" she asked hesitantly. Noah sat down across from her, his expression guarded. How much trust is too much to lose in a relationship after betrayal? Write in the comments. "What is it?" "I just want to say thank you," Camille said softly, "for giving me the chance to try. I know it hasn't been easy for you, and I know I don't deserve it. But it means everything to me." Noah nodded, his chest tightening. "It's not just about you, Camille. It's about the kids, the life we've built together. I'm trying because I don't want to throw that away." "Do you think we'll ever get back to where we were?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Noah admitted, "but I think we're taking steps in the right direction." Months later, they stood in the backyard, watching their children play. The tension between them had eased, replaced by a tentative sense of connection. They weren't the same couple they had been before the affair, but they were rebuilding something new. "Do you think we'll make it?" Camille asked, her voice quiet. Noah glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "I think we're trying," he said. "And for now, that's enough." Camille reached for his hand, and for the first time in months, Noah didn't pull away.